Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, I am Pearl Jean Mabe and I would like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. Webinars are brought to you as a membership benefit of Heritage Ohio. Heritage Ohio's mission is of course to help people save the places that matter, build community, live better. Today we will have an amazing presentation on developing a request for proposal, a very exciting topic. And we will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question, please type it into the question box at any time. Most issues with the webinar software will be solved if you simply close the program and restart it with the link that was sent to you. This webinar has been approved for AIA continuing education credits, 1 credit to be specific. So please email me, Pearl, as will be indicated in the chat box with my email and the learning objectives if you would like to receive credit or a certificate. Our presenter today is Craig Gossman. He has over 35 years of experience in urban design, planning, historic preservation, and architecture. For 15 years, Craig served as a principal partner with Kinzelman Klein, Gossman, KKG, and later in the same capacity with MKSK. In 2013, Craig founded Gossman Group Design and Planning in order to pursue combined architecture and urban design work with select clients. We are also proud to say that he is on Heritage Ohio's board of directors. And with that, I will hand this over to Craig.
Okay, thanks, Pearl. I'm assuming you can hear me okay. If you can't, then please let me know. Yeah, this is, as Pearl said, a very exciting subject. It's kind of difficult to bring levity and excitement to a subject like requests for proposals, but I think we put some things in here to maybe help stimulate the presentation, and I'll be looking forward to questions at the end as they come up. Again, and I won't spend time on this, it's just my opportunity with a closed caption audience to at least echo what Pearl said about what we do at Gossman Group. We're engaged in a lot of projects, and it's been interesting to be able to do work pretty much throughout the eastern United States and some in the western states as well since 2013 when Gossman Group was put together. A variety of project typologies from urban design and planning to architecture and historic preservation tax credit projects. So we're very busy and excited to be involved in all that with the communities that we serve. There was mention about the AIA tax or the AIA credits for continuing education, and these are the learning objectives that we submitted to the AIA for this particular presentation, and we hope to hit all of these as we move through. And again, as we get into this at the end, there'll be plenty of time for questions, and please post those so we can try to get to those at the end. I'm trying to hope that this doesn't really go the entire hour of presentation here. I'm shooting for 40 minutes or so we have ample time to field those questions. So RFPs are an interesting subject in the world of the consultant, and I've been on both sides of the table. I've been on teams that are reviewing RFPs and helping them create RFPs for communities and community development corporations or various organizations. And I've also been on the other side as a consultant responding to RFPs, and there's no particular template out there. I've seen all shapes, sizes, some that are very confusing, some that are very clear, some that are very oversimplified, others that go into a bit of a thesis project with just the RFP itself. So somewhere in the middle is the right answer, but I'll give you some of that as we move into the maybe the second half of this presentation, which I'm going to present a case study on a project that we've recently been involved with in Abilene, Texas. So something that I think, and I'm sure that those that are on this call either deal with RFPs or are writing them or considering putting something out from the communities that you're located in. And I guess that, some of these things will sound fairly elementary, but it's important that we touch base on these, and I'll try to move swiftly through this. But first point is, are you really ready to issue an RFP? Sometimes I've heard people say, well, we'll just put all the pressure on the recipient and the developer or whoever we're putting the RFP out to come back to us with all the answers, like what do they need, how's it going to work, what's the deal structure going to be, and so forth. But that's kind of taken the long road and a very frustrating road when you're on the side of the table as the consultant or the developer. I think that if we're talking about real estate development, and that's the kind of the focus here, it would be very important that the property that you're considering putting an RFP out for is under control. That might mean an agreement with the current property owner to where they will play ball as this thing moves along, or perhaps it's just having an agreement in place as a first right of refusal, something legally that at least binds that property owner, current property owner, to your process of going after RFP. Zoning plays a big role in that. Is the property zoned properly? Are there public incentives or financing tools that the community might be able to offer to the developer or the entity submitting their proposals? Has a vision been prepared that goes beyond just this piece of property? Developers are busy all the time looking for opportunities, looking for deals, and they will quickly sort through those deals that seem to make sense, where maybe some traction has already been experienced in that community, and other investments are out on the street, so to speak, that people are investing in the buildings, the community is investing into their downtown, if that's the district that it's located in, the city's investing into infrastructure and so forth. Has a qualified team been put together to kind of, select the developer? That team should probably include real estate professionals, financing professionals, Main Street professionals if it's in the downtown and in a particular historic district. So it shouldn't just be a closed net group. Sometimes in a municipality, a city manager and a purchasing agent make those kind of decisions. And I feel that the team needs to be a little broader than that, because some proposals may not jump out as a preferred direction unless those that are trained to really look into what the deal is all about has a chance to speak up about it. Another important part of this is, how quickly can the project move into an implementation stage if a developer is selected? So these are things that I kind of feel like have to be flushed out, sorted out, even before the RFP is being designed and delivered. Another confusing part about this process is RFP versus RFQ. What are the differences, and what does that really mean? And I'll give you the quick on this, and then again we can circle back to other questions. But basically, the RFP represents a request for proposal. An RFQ is request for qualifications. Oftentimes they're merged together, where a developer is asked to put a lot of front-end material together to put into the proposal that shows where they've been, how long they've been in business, kind of projects they put together, et cetera, which is all very critical and important information. But on top of all of that, then they are then being asked to put together a proposal for the specific request that you have for a building or site or district or whatever the proposal might be around. I would really ask that when you're thinking about putting RFPs out, that you break this into two sections, two separate requests. Don't let time drive decisions that you might regret later. I would suggest that the RFQ process is critically important for you to vet who you feel is actually qualified to submit a proposal. Don't go through and put developers through or other agents through the misery of putting a proposal together when they're really competing with the world at that point. What you should be doing is vetting those RFQs, the qualifications, and it's going to be very clear who has the experience and who doesn't have the experience to actually perform, and then set those aside and ask those qualified submissions to bring forward an actual proposal. That way it's going to make your life easier too, because you cut probably the submissions in half at least, and you're also now down to the people that can actually perform and have been there and can do this. It may sound, again, elementary, but what is the purpose? What's the RFP for? I mean, sometimes we get caught up in just trying to describe a particular project and getting into the legalese, if you will, of a proposal that's coming through, again, a purchasing agent at the city or kind of the municipality guidelines. We kind of lose track of actually what it is we're trying to accomplish. And it's very fair for you to bring forward your opinions in that, so that the developer, or again, whatever entity we're going after, is clear about what your objectives are and what the purpose is. And leading to who can respond. Is it all about just development companies, or could a local individual that might have interest in the project submit something? Well, in the two-step part of qualifications and RFP, they may not stand out as a qualified developer to move the project forward, but what they do in that process is alert developers that they have an interest in perhaps participating in an investment level, or being a local group that could help a national or state developer expedite the process. Who is issuing the RFP? The city or county or any governmental agency will have certain guidelines that they have to follow to put an RFP out on the street. It's very critical about timing and when they receive things, and being postmarked and not received a minute after, and so forth. Private enterprise, the community development corporations, the Main Street organization, a not-for-profit or nonprofit that might be issuing, has a little bit more leeway in how to handle that RFP. For instance, if they feel that they've given maybe they haven't given enough time for responses, they might just go ahead and call everybody or put out a notice that, hey, we've extended the date for another 2 weeks or what have you. Sometimes cities can't, they don't have the luxury of doing that. They have to stop the process and go back and reissue a complete new RFP. Project information. I think this gives you a chance to, kind of delineate what the project scope is, what you're going after, introducing the project. This is, can be very straightforward and just kind of identify the real estate. It can also project a bit of maybe bringing forward some of the enthusiasm that you might have about the project, or perhaps even other projects that had come forward in the past for this particular site or building. It's completely fair to bring all of that out and let people know that perhaps others have looked at this, and these are some of the challenges of the site or the building from the past, and these are things that you're looking to try to help them solve to move a qualified project into implementation. I can't overemphasize as well the importance of quality photographs and maps when you're putting the RFP out. Sometimes it's photocopied quickly, or it's brought from another study and it doesn't read well, and this is where you're conveying the importance of the project, and you want to make sure that you're conveying it properly. These days, most of these RFPs are issued electronically, so it's a little easier to read and so forth. But having websites right on the RFP that would suggest where you might go for other mapping or other views of a particular project. I responded to an RFP not too long ago where there was actually it took me to a website that was drone footage of a flyover of the site, which was very beneficial because it gave you clearly a bird's eye view of what was going on there that sometimes Google Earth and other aerial maps just don't give you the clarity of. So I think that's important. I think it's important for you to quantify information at that point, not just about size and configuration of buildings or sites, but the kind of information that might make sense relative to the particular use. If it's going to be a mixed-use project, you might break some of the data down that would give them an insight into your thoughts on retail or office or residential or all of those. The history of the site is obviously important as well, not just about the history of a building or the district, but what else has happened there? Is there an evolution of things that have happened over time that a developer might find interesting and perhaps tie a solution into bringing history forward, so to speak? I think I mentioned this before, but the websites that might contain other pertinent information for the recipient of the RFP are very important. So if you have access to those websites to bring other information forward, that's the time to do it. Submission requirements will vary from project to project. but I think at a minimum, I think that this probably tells us what we really need to think about. A cover letter is obviously important, just to let the entity that's submitting announce who they are. They don't have to go into great detail there, but again, some RFPs will limit you to certain submission requirements. For instance, they may say that a cover letter cannot exceed 2 pages. Another group may allow you to go on and on and on with that, and some people have actually, myself included, have responded to an RFP really bringing a lot of information about the project and our submission forward into the cover letter, and then they can refer back to the proposal for more detail. So it's almost an executive summary, if you will, in the cover letter. And I think that even though it might be repeating what you've asked them to do, I think it's important that they provide evidence in that cover letter that they have a clear understanding of the project goals. Developers, generally speaking, and I do work for a lot of them, they kind of have oftentimes their own view of what a project is or a place is, and they kind of reach conclusion rather quickly. And sometimes when they're just looking at information and mapping and buildings and trying to kick the tires of the community where this might be, excuse me, they might not be reflecting in their own mind what the true understanding of the project goals are that have come forward from the community. So I think it's important that they reiterate that in the cover letter or executive summary, if that's what it turns out to be. Qualifications, and this goes back to the, whether it's a two-part submission or one part, but I think this is where the submission group, again, perhaps a real estate developer with the topic here, would have a chance to bring, and this is typically collateral material that they have already spooled up. This isn't anything that's customized for your particular project or the submission, but it lets them talk to the history of their company, how long they've been in business, the kind of projects that they've done that might reflect the project that's on the table in the RFP. And I think it's important for that not just to be glossy pictures of those projects, but to also provide maybe just a one sheet kind of summary of what the deal structure was for those projects, especially the ones that are closely aligned with what your particular project is all about. References obviously are important. You want to make sure that the developer is not just qualified, but is really highly thought of in other communities in which they've worked. And have they been involved in public and private projects before? Is public-private partnering an important part of how they conduct themselves and how they conduct their business? Probably team reference, or I'm sorry, team identification as well in this. Who is the actual team that's going to be in charge of this particular project with this submission? Identify those folks, giving a little bit of their background and so forth. It's always helpful to make sure that the people that are going to be on your project have the again, the qualifications to perform and perform well. And I think on the development proposal itself, there's several things here. Again, if we're in the two-step, we're going RFQ and RFP. This would all be in the RFP submission. This would not necessarily be in an RFQ. That's where we would be getting the background information from the individuals and the company and so forth, and then we would make some decisions about, okay, who do we want to actually get a proposal from? If we've received 15 inquiries and we've got their general packet of information, didn't take them too long to put it together. There might be some customization of a cover letter and so forth, but here are qualifications. You're going to be able to vet from that and then move forward with a handful of those to then ask them for a true development proposal. And in that development proposal, I think at a minimum, you're going to want to have a site plan. If it's if this is an existing building, it may be the floor plans of those buildings. If it's a site plan that's showing a district or some acreage, you want to at least see a site plan that represents the kind of vision that they have for the project. A program description of the individual breakdown of the buildings. We're involved in a project now where we responded to an RFP about 2 years ago, and I'm on the team with some other firms. And in that case, it's a high density mixed use project with hotel, office space, parking garages, housing, retail on ground levels. So a mix of uses. And it's important, if that's the case with your project, that the program description and the breakdown of those is clearly indicated. The architecture and urban design, I think that's kind of left to the recipient and his architectural team and design team. But obviously, if it's a preservation heavy project, you're going to want to make sure that the approach they're taking is sensitive to your design development guidelines, if those exist within the urban fabric of your downtown or district, or if you're going to even look to this developer to help guide some of that and influence that over time into the future. You may want to integrate that into their deliverable. There's always opportunities, even with individual buildings, to create some placemaking within the project. Placemaking comes in the form of streetscape improvements, public art, gathering spaces for pedestrians that are frequenting downtown. It doesn't have to be, these projects should not just be about the outside walls and the inside uses, if you will, of the program for the development. It's important that you see how this building or this project is going to integrate into its context, and what opportunities there may be to even heighten that context with some quality public art or quality placemaking and design. On the quantitative program information, I think this has to be very carefully articulated from when you receive the proposal from the developer about what they envision, not just in terms of typology, but the actual sizes and uses that they're going to bring to the project. If it's apartments, it's number of units. If it's housing, is it a market rate rental, or is it condominiums? Is it townhomes? What's the breakdown of that? What are the square footages of those? How many units are they bringing online? And if it's other uses like retail and restaurants and office space and so forth, it's imperative that we know what those sizes are, because that's all going to be converted at some point in time into a development pro forma. And so understanding what they have in mind to bring forward is very important. And I think it's fair to say that demographic information that's shared with the developers about your particular municipality will start to drive some of the marketability and some of the visioning, if you will, of the repurposing of an existing building or the development of an open site, because that's going to start telling you how much square footage, how much demand there is for particular uses, and then of course what the absorption rate is for those uses over time moving forward, so that we might be looking at a project that has to have a phasing over 5 or 8, 10 years versus a one-time building that might have upper story development and lower level retail and ground floor uses that might happen all at one time right up front. So understanding the size, the overall breakdown of the uses, and what they're projecting in terms of the pricing for that space is in the open market is very important. You're going to be able to react to that. Again, that group of professionals sitting around at the table that's helping you to vet these projects will start to look at some things and say, gee, their pro forma, they're going to think they can get $2.85 a square foot for apartments in this community right now. There's not an apartment complex or a multi-family building that's yielding over $1 a square foot. So how do we make that balance? Is there gap financing that might make up the difference, or are these people just not really dialed into the local demographics and the local marketability? Another part of this submission requirement, and again, this is on the development side, so there's going to have to be some time invested into this, but there will be some disclosure of information that will obviously have to be proprietary and guaranteed that is the case by those that are reviewing the proposals. But from a real estate development standpoint, you're going to be very concerned that whoever you select has the financial capacity to perform and actually implement the project. So it's not uncommon to be asking for personal financial statements or balance sheets from companies, asking to see their tax return, maybe getting some documentation from lenders that they've used or private capital equity sources that they use that would demonstrate to you that they have lines of credit or the capacity to borrow money to put into this project. We don't want to go down the trail with someone that has, great ideas and all the right answers, but then can't perform or can't implement because of financial restrictions or thresholds. On top of just this kind of information that obviously is a lot of written word and some mapping, I think that it's important that you stand back and ask, is there something we can do more that will allow this opportunity to kind of distinguish itself from other RFPs that are out there? What can we do in terms of the wow factor here to go beyond verbalization and get into some visualization so that the recipients it kind of gets their attention. They're saying, gee, there's something here that is different than other RFPs from other communities. It looks like they're passionate about their community and they're bringing that forward even in this offering. And I think it's important that again your passion needs to be brought forward in that it's not an important project because of desperation. It's an important project to you because of the economic development opportunities it will continue to leverage in your community. So making sure that they understand that is important. And then depending upon who is issuing this and what role all of these entities would play, if the municipality is going to be taking an important role in this, whether they're the issuing agent or they're bringing other things to the table, it's important that they're in sync with the opportunity and that you've had dialogue with them if you're the Main Street organization or a port authority or a community development corporation, that you're in sync with the municipality and the city council and economic development leadership within the municipality. We're moving forward with this, and we're going to be asking you to participate in some things and make sure that they're comfortable with that level of participation, or if they're not, what's their choke point? When can they not participate, and what will they feel comfortable with or not feel comfortable with? Because as the project moves along, and it was on one of the first slides, we want to make sure that after we've vetted all the submissions, we've asked people to submit development proposals, they've put investment of time into that, we've had dialogue with all those developers, and we've now started to come down to a selection process. We want to make sure when we do make that selection that this project now doesn't have to go back and start getting formalized and understood and agreed upon by the municipality or others. We want to move swiftly into implementation, and that's certainly what the developer's goal is as well. So to maybe reflect on some of those elements of an RFP and to talk a little bit about how to maybe bring a little bit more life to an RFP. I've been doing work in Abilene, Texas for almost 2 years now. I was invited down initially to help them try to do just this, to help them put an RFP together that had some life to it that could attract a hotel developer, in this case, to come into downtown Abilene and build a hotel next to their civic center. Abilene, if you don't know about it, you probably heard about it in Western movies in days past. It is literally in the middle of nowhere. It's right in the middle of the state of Texas. I always thought it was West Texas until I went out there, and you're basically only halfway across that large state when you get to Abilene. But it's a community of about a little under 200,000 people. So it's a little larger than maybe some Main Street communities, but it has some of the characteristics of a smaller town in that it's kind of on its own. You have to drive 2.5, 3 hours to get to any other large metropolitan area. So as they had been trying to move their downtown forward, there was always hope that they could get a hotel next to their civic center. Mayor Norm Archibald there in town was very frustrated, along with other leadership, that they were not able to attract a hotelier to come into downtown Abilene. A lot of pressure going on with Abilene Christian University's expansion and some other prime suburban shopping and entertainment areas that were continuing to grow. And if downtown was ever going to make a stand and really start to turn itself around, it was now. So I got introduced to the group through an economic development associate that I had worked with in the past, and started to get together with them to sort that out. Well, as I looked at first of all a couple trips to Abilene, it's not as green as it is in the Midwest, that's for sure, and there's a lot of issues surrounding water and the value of water and how to really bring life into downtown, literally with vegetation and green. But it's the way of the life there. They're very comfortable with that. But their urban fabric was pretty fractured in that large streets, small buildings, a lot of setbacks, not the kind of urban environment that we're used to seeing in the Midwest. But they did have this civic center, which was a little tired, a little dated. We suggested that even, again, getting ready for an RFP, we said, I don't think you have to wait for an RFP to know that this thing needs, it's not a major, certainly a significant facelift. And they moved right ahead with getting a facelift on the Civic Center to actually get it in better shape for a hotel developer to understand that they're already making commitments in that regard. But the property that was under control by the city was directly across the street from the Civic Center. And over time, they had, this one's dated 2014. I think they issued this RFP in 13, 14, and I want to say 15 also. And it was an RFP that the city put together trying to find a hotel developer to come into their downtown. And when you look at RFPs, again, this one being no different than a lot of others that we've seen, a lot of words, a lot of information, almost code-like as you read through it, prescriptive from a municipality standpoint, but certainly nothing that would excite you about this. Words can't replace what, as they say, a picture tells 1,000 words. And in this case, this was volumes of words describing the process, some of the regulatory situations that the municipality would want to make sure a submitter, a real estate developer was aware of, and that kind of thing. So what we did was take a look at the guts of that, because the information wasn't all necessarily that bad, but the way it was packaged, the way it was bundled, and then where they advertised for it and who they were trying to solicit to come to town, they were just running into dead ends. They, over that 2 or 3 year period, and I apologize for not knowing, I know it was at least 2, if not 3 years that they had submitted this. They'd only had responses from 4 developers, and all of those were for typical suburban hotels to be built downtown, and that was not what the vision was. And so you're getting a little glimpse of the vision here on the cover page of the RFP that we helped put together for Abilene in this regard. We've kind of branched it beyond just the hotel. We had to build a story, create a story, create value to this, so the developers looked at Abilene a little differently, not just about a hotel site, but other things that were brewing. Part of that was that we created a district surrounding the hotel, including the Civic Center, which we recommend they change to a convention center tag, and built the idea of a festival district, a place where even as it existed before we showed up, this is where a lot of local festivals and street fairs would take place because of the wide streets and being down next to the Civic Center and so forth. So we said, well, let's just call it that, and we'll create the image of a festival district. This kind of speaks to the value of having, certain officials, whether that's the mayor or president of council or president of a planning commission, whoever those officials are, that they really express kind of a warm welcome to those that are actually going to look at this RFP. I've responded to RFPs where the issuing agent will remain nameless, but they're typically large universities that feel that just having the chance to work for this university would be the greatest thing that the recipient could ever do. And so they're almost looking down their nose at the people that they're submitting RFPs to. So how do you build kind of a warmth about this process that lets the recipient know that the community is really behind this and they want to see this happen and they want to invite you to their town and be a part of their town, not just respond to an RFP. It may sound like a small thing, but it's critically important. The developers that got singled out through this, and we shortlisted 4, I believe, at the end of the process, all said that, one of the things that caught their eye initially was just when they made their trip to Abilene, how there were not just people showing them around, but there was a genuine warmth and welcome and a handshake, and it means a lot. So as we started to put the information together for this, again, instead of just listing it all out in reams of a Word document, we started to really create a package that starts to have some life, some vibrancy to it, using quote boxes and other graphic tools that kind of stimulate the reader to read on. We had a lot of words in this as well, but we felt it was important that the document itself started to really build excitement and enthusiasm about wanting to be there, to be a part of something, not just bringing a project typology to town. So it was important for us to kind of weave that in. Even the data of mapping and maybe telling a quick history. It's not the time to give a real deep dive into history, but how could I put a timeline together that might give someone that doesn't have familiarity with Abilene an understanding of what has gone on there, and very quickly what some of the highlights are. And of course, location maps in a place like Texas are important just to kind of see how it ties into other parts of the state and the region. And then things that, kind of that distinguish your community. This is the chance to bring that passion forward. What are the things that really make Abilene so great? And what are some of the numbers? What are some of the statistics that might be visitorships to a local museum or a site? It might be a local corporate leader that gets a lot of trips through their town for business to business kind of use. It might be a outdoor amphitheater that attracts visitors from a major region. Bringing these numbers forward and quantifying them so that these recipients get a good, clear understanding of what the community is all about is critically important. And then being very clear about the intent of the proposal. What are we trying to do? What have we given thought to? What do we think makes a lot of sense? In this case, we tried to get the story bigger than just a hotel. It was about being part of something bigger, helping downtown Abilene really become the best it can be. We stayed on with Abilene as the RFP got issued and actually started working with them on a downtown strategic plan as well. But the first thing that we did was this actual piece of actually putting out the RFP for a hotel and trying to work with developers. We put together kind of a hook, kind of, a statement that kind of lets people, the recipient, kind of imagine what it would be like to see not just the architecture of this place, but to, be a part of the Abilene experience. What is that Abilene experience where the Wild West kind of meets new urbanism, strange collision of cultures there? But that was the image and the story we were trying to tell and bring forward. And so at the end of the day, we had 4 developers. Actually, we had 8 developers submit their credentials in the development process. We shortlisted that to 4 and went back to them for individual development breakdowns. Again, an investment of time on their part to make that happen. We shortlisted it to 2, and he actually went back for clarifications on the deal points with them. But today, Garfield Investments out of Dallas is the developer that was awarded this in early 16. Late 16, And this last year was spent putting together the economics package that happens through the state and the locals, as well as the developer. And instead of getting just a rudimentary suburban motel, if you will, built across in the Civic Center, we're getting something that represents the vision of the urban design that the city wanted to have, and in a flag hotel. And it's probably a 3.5 to a 4-star hotel that we're going to be getting in downtown Abilene. So I'll quickly close this out just by saying that I think you're getting the idea that instead of just a lot of words and submission of a document that kind of looks like a proposal where we want you to submit a proposal to buy a new copier for City Hall, we're putting life to this so that the developers that receive this really get a true sense of the passion that's in the community and an understanding of where this might go at the end of the day. We've also reflected in here, at least initially, some of the incentives that were available that might create a great, strong public-private partnership. We put together kind of a timeline and how the interview process would take place and how we might, the selection points that might be criteria for that selection. And then, of course, an appendix that had a lot of other kind of small print information that can't replace the big ideas. We put it in an appendix, and there was more to it than just this, but we put it in an appendix so it was there, they could reflect on it, but they didn't have to wade through it to understand the essence of what the RFP was all about. So with that, I'm going to just move to questions and be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
All right, so you heard Craig. If you have any questions, please type them into the question box this time. So we'll wait a couple minutes to see if we get any. I think that was a very thorough presentation, Craig. I thoroughly enjoyed that.
No, well, thanks. I should have said up front that, you know, just by Googling RFPs, of course, we all Google everything these days, but, you know, you can find yourself with a whole pile of a variety of RFP types, some more detailed than others, but it's really worth the time to kind of go online and do that. And in fact, you could even, if you'd like to see the full RFP that we put together for Abilene, you could Google that, the Abilene Hotel and Festival District RFP, and you'll find it online. It's still on there.
Awesome. Well, I'm not seeing any questions at this moment, but I guess I have a question. So just as kind of a quick Cliff Notesy type of version, what would be your number one piece of advice for somebody if they were developing a request for proposal? What's your like number one pet peeve that they could avoid?
I think I would have to say it's almost make sure that you've done your homework on this and not just put an RFP out on the street quickly in the hopes that a developer will respond to it and kind of tell you how it's all going to go down. You should put the time in with your economic development officials and building code officials and others that are in your community to make sure that everybody's on board moving forward. It's beyond just property control. It's really having those opportunities for a true public-private collaboration at the end of the day, and those tools are going to be important for a developer to be aware of. So you don't want to be offering things like TIF financing or a CRA district or tax abatement and so forth without having the municipality clearly on board with being able to do that. You need to flush all that out at the very beginning.
Great. So we did get a question. What did it cost to put together that RFP? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's kind of like jewelry. It's all over the place. This was, as you can see from the Abilene experience, they didn't really have anything visually that they could lean on to bring information forward in an RFP. So this RFP process was almost a very quick charrette on what the design and vision might be for that festival district and hotel so that we could bring that to life in the RFP. If a community's already put together a downtown plan, there's already been ideas and thoughts about the building or the site, if it's open ground or a mixed-use project, that kind of imagery can be integrated into the RFP. So at that point in time, it's probably less expensive for a consultant to get involved in helping to prepare the RFP. It might be that there are people within the community that have that wherewithal to do it on their own and or for less money. But I would say at a minimum, a consultant team to put it together, if all the imagery was already in place and they just needed to kind of sort through and make a strong looking visual package, that's probably down in the $5,000 range. But if you're having to create imagery, create an experience, create the story, create this district, this gets up into the tens of thousands of dollars. So it was important to Abilene. They didn't regret for a minute spending the kind of money they did. There was even money spent beyond our work to, entertain the developers when they came to town, giving them tours, giving them kind of the keys to the city. So there's a big commitment of resources, both financial and human resources, to make these projects successful.
Great. So I have another question, and then Lynn, if I'm not saying the question correctly, please retype it in a way that I may be able to read it. Do you use process or an outline when reviewing submitted RFPs? So I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, Lynn. But I guess what kind of process do you use when you're reviewing RFPs, Craig?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. I think, again, this has to be kind of premeditated before you go in. As I quickly put up on the screen, you may have saw on the Abilene project, we actually brought into the RFP when it was first issued certain selection criteria that we were going to be, at least weighting one way or another. We didn't give them any indication of the weighting of it, but there were certain factors that we wanted to make sure that the developer knew they had to have in the submission to give to make sure that we could kind of compare apples to apples. So I think each project is probably going to be a little different, but in terms of that process, I think if we were looking at let's just say an individual building, I think you would want to make sure that they, one of the things that they're doing is on the architecture and urban design, they're cognizant of the context and they're cognizant of certain principles that you have valued as a community. And if they're going to be using historic tax credits, obviously they're going to be going by the Secretary standards. So there's certain things about the architecture and urban design that you would want to have in that process. There's certain things about financing that you would want to have in that process. The proposal should respond directly that, here's how we're envisioning a pro forma breakdown of this project. And this is even kind of the tax lift that might happen to the community or for the community if this project were brought online. And here's how we're going to finance the project. And oh, by the way, we want to do this project at this level of quality, but in order for us to do that, we're going to have to buy down some of the costs of the project. So we're going to be looking at the municipality to bring some public finance components to bear so that we can literally bring a better project online. That might mean something as simple as the municipality throws the land in on a deal where they've secured the land. They're now bringing the land to the developer at a reduced cost or just a direct reimbursement cost versus trying to put an appraised value on the land and have the developer buy this land at optimum kind of values. So it could be bringing land to the table. It might be bringing some of the financial tools we've already talked about to the table. So there's different components within the process of the selection that I think each community is going to have to get their arms around and say, these are the important values that we have to understand about the development.
All right. And it looks like we are just about out of questions. One final question, which is, Craig, would you be willing to send me the PowerPoint so that I can send it out to interested parties?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so the PowerPoint will be available. The recording will be going out tomorrow. So if you want a version of the PowerPoint, you can just email me back from that, and also let me know if you want AIA credits. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. For our calendar of upcoming events, including our future webinars, please visit us at Heritage Ohio. Thank you, Craig, and have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Pearl.